lot of the things that John said in that book, one of the most interesting things is he describes the Maya conception that at 2012 you have an opening of the center of the Milky Way galaxy, and a ladder emerges from the center, and out of this ladder emerges a serpent rope. And riding upon this serpent rope, like he's surfing the serpent rope, is an enlightened being who may possibly be Quetzalcoatl. Well, what John said, which I found so interesting, is he said that you can take out, he thought he could take out the archaic Maya term serpent rope and insert the modern word wormhole, and you have what the Mayans are describing is going to happen in 2012. A stargate or a wormhole is going to open from the galactic center, and out of this is going to emerge an enlightened being or a group of enlightened beings. And so if you follow this serpent rope stargate connection, and you go back into various sacred traditions, whether it be Egypt or Sumeria or elsewhere, Tibet, you find enlightened beings that ride upon serpent ropes. And you see these same beings entering Earth through gateways. So I think we've got a real solid connection here that this serpent rope is in fact a stargate or a wormhole. And what I marvel at is the way that modern science and the ancient Maya concepts are starting to match. Researchers talk about the stargate or wormhole as the apex of our science, and that if we can get a hold of this stargate science, it will literally lead to our salvation. They use religious terms in that sense. And if we don't get this stargate connection, then we have to start all over. And they talk about this is the most dangerous moment. This is the moment where we either get it or we don't. And so this is why this Maya conception is so important to me.
This is a post from a long time ago called The Sword of Zen, and it's really just a being gematria database that anyone can copy and begin their own with, showing basically just a few of the Hebrew applied to English or Hebrew English gematria values. And I've gotten so many more now, and of course I use a file for each number. I also have, for example, it helps when you already have a Microsoft Word being open. Usually I have this file, the keys, which I add like all the more recent things, and then I'll go put them in. But here, in each of these, see, I need to get this better organized, but at least I have the data for when it goes online. But there's a lot of Hebrew I got from this one website, which I deleted the link. It's Esoteric Delight, and they're not around anymore. And I don't even have all the Hebrew values I had. Some of them I've lost. There was a point where half of my files just deleted randomly. So it's always also good to have multiple copies on different flash drives and hard drives, and even uploaded. So have like the various wherever it's referenced in Grant's books, like a number, and then also the Ninth Arch verse and commentary, and then also Hebrew English values, Jewish gematria values, Greek, even other facts where numbers arise. Like I said, it's just where I'm just keeping the data here. It's not in a pretty format, really. Eventually, hopefully I can make a better formatted website. Yeah, this database, I don't really want to talk much about it because there's not much to say. Other than that, like, you can use it to take numbers and extrapolate other things, and from there you'll find a lot of, especially with the Cabala of 9 chambers, and obviously you can use Control F to find things, but you can extrapolate a lot between numbers. You can kind of take what would be the difference between them and find, cohesive patterns and phrases and whatnot. And obviously you have the Cabala of 9 chambers, the Ein Sof and Ein Sof Or.
So I just want to make a preface to my video, since I'm going to be using the PDFs, that while basically I do condone the use of PDFs, but I also condone the purchasing of the physical book because it's, I mean, a lot easier to read. Then you actually have the physical edition, and you're supporting the publisher, usually, unless you're buying it secondhand, which I had to do in many cases. But even then, it was like the Ninth Arch I paid $290 for, Beyond the Mob Zone $365, and this was before they reprinted the whole series, which I could have gotten cheaper, but I wanted it years ago, so it was worth it. And there's a lot of other books Kenneth Grant, refers to and quotes, and especially in the Ninth Arch, and then Dark Doorway of the Beast, which is kind of hard to find. I finally got that after years of looking for it. So yeah, I just wanted to preface that and say that I would recommend you buy the books if you're interested, and hopefully I don't get in trouble for using a PDF of a book that I paid about 20 times the real price for.
This is a pattern I found by which Kenneth Grant actually mentions in the Ninth Arch, right here in verse 456:23. Hungry for ocean, yet choked by the implacable mists that settle and shroud the great yellow river. And it talks about various. 456 is the number of RPSTOVAL, part of the secret formula in Librael of Set and the egg, which forms part of the key. 456 also equals Ipsos, the word of Maat, according to Liber Penumbra, the book of the foreshadowing of the feather. The main significance here is that 456 is its pivotal position in the series of trines from which the following correspondences arise. And there's a lot more that I've found, especially with Hebrew English. I'm not going to go into them. I have in various posts, so I'm not going to go into them now. But 1, 2, 3, the Mego entities, half fungus, half crustacean, inimical to the Great Old Ones. Those are in, I believe, a Lovecraft book. Mego, like the brood of Cthulhu, were composed of matter which differed essentially from the composition of the Old Ones. 234, Nodens, god of the deep. 345, the word pyramid. 456, the pivot or in-betweenness concept relating to the Mav zone. It is also the number of mother, basically, mother matter of Ipsos, Maat, and of Repstoval, or RPSTOVAL, the secret formula of Set. 567, Morvran, the black crow, identical with black wings, the raven of Sin Sinwa, which is like the one-eyed raven on the cover of the Ninth Arch. 678 is Oreg, the seventh Titan or Great Old One, whose identity is masked by the alien form of the god Set. 789 is Alala, 93 plus Ipsos 690 as 696. These words respectively of Maat and the Eon of Perfection, the perfect Eon. More has gone into that in Cults of the Shadow, Chapter 8, Outside the Circles of Time, and from then on. Note that Ipsos as 456 plus Itzaxar reveals Itzaxar as the black stone, a variant of the stone of Ma Nefestat Ion. And see, he talks a lot about the black stone as this symbol throughout these books, and then obviously the egg as well. And note also that the number 456 identifies Maat, Mother, as the pivotal point between worlds outside the circles of time, where matter becomes negative and receptive to otherness. The verse number is ascribed to the path of Maat. It symbolizes waters hungry for ocean. Reflected in Arid's crystal stone, the waters of the Yellow River roar seaward through the valley of Honan. The mists that settle like a shroud upon the Yellow River are the elemental vapors conjured by Sin Sin Wa to shroud the secret entrance of the House of 100 Raptures in London's Limehouse, China. Yeah, the Ninth Arch it's weird because each little commentary, it's not much, but when you tie it all together again, you have to look at it in toto, like in total. And Typhonian OTO. And with the Hebrew, the English, the Greek, you'll see like this pattern emerge, and it has to do with exactly what Kenneth Grant talks about in the first chapter of Outer Gateways, he calls it the Primal Grimoire, and he talks about how all these other books are grimoires, such as the Book of Dead Names, the Necronomicon, even the Book of the Dead, the Secret Doctrine, or what it's based on, the Book of Zion. All these different books basically try to, or like, they're like renditions of the Primal Grimoire, and I forgot, there's other terms for it, but even Crowley, people, like, it's in Liber 777, but it's really Liber 500, Sefer Sephiroth, Crowley's Gematria database, pretty much, but it's all in Hebrew. And so Crowley obviously saw the value, and he even see how certain values had certain properties or patterns, correspondences, basically. And the 1 through 9 unfolds into this much larger pattern. With these correspondences, a lot can be seen and also done, like manipulated, because it's a kind of mechanical machine almost. And even Leibniz saw this and just called it, part of the monad. I think we're just now coming back around to understanding this, and luckily it's not completely lost. But yeah, see, Crowley just has a few Hebrew things. Some of them are really important, some of them not. And there's a few other books, like I pulled this up. Have this in printed format. Again, it's only in Hebrew, another Hebrew Gematria book database type thing. It's a little more expansive than Crowley's, but they had to put it in 2 different volumes because obviously it's a lot. But it's also just Hebrew. And Crowley in Magic, or Book 4, in the chapter on the altar, he says to study this book. And it's the Canon by William Sterling, an exposition of the pagan mystery perpetuated in the Cabala as the rule of the arts, or of all the arts. And they've republished it a few times, and you can even find it at certain bookstores in a paperback version for cheap. But it also only talks about Greek. It gets into certain higher numbers and certain proportional relationships between a lot of ideas and planets and in the cosmos and whatnot, and it is pretty interesting. But again, once again, like, no one book covers it all. You have to look at it. You have to look at a lot of different things, and then in perspective of history. For example, I have to use Google Chrome actually for these to even work, and they're not even playing these plugins. But I usually use Pale Moon, and in the Jewish Gematria cipher on Gematrix, they had a link. I don't know if they still do. I don't know. Well, they talked about how the Jewish Gematria formula is this Masonic cipher, and like I said before, I don't really find it that important, other than as like a cross-reference, just to see what comes up. But they do talk about this key and how it's a missing key. There is a missing key, and I think that it's simply the application of Hebrew to English. And then you can also use that even in like the Sanskrit transliterations, because if you take yoga or Sanskrit or any other word that would otherwise be put in Sanskrit or even Tibetan or Chinese, if you spell it out in English, there tends to be a lot of overlap and a lot of connection there anyway. And I think it's the phonetic and the idea translates or resonates, and it all connects into Alfred Korzybski's general semantics, which I end up talking about later. But I have to mention it because a lot of that is lost in like anyone's beginning introduction to this sort of thing. It's hard to wrap your head around how this sort of thing works, how Gematria would work. how these correspondences connect, and it's hard to explain basically, but the problem is that even language has a sort of numerical frequency and function and format, because that's actually how any words are able to be picked up and have any meaning and transmit meaning and then be received. It's basically digital wave forms. It's pretty much, it's waves, and each one of those little waves has a, if you were to look at it, like, I've edited enough audio to know, and I mean, you'd have to do it yourself to see, but it is just little bits. It's bits, and what I see is how myself, but then other people, we get caught in these branches, as we're thinking or speaking, and we'll go down a path, so to speak, and especially in like arguments, people will like trap you there, and like it's like not necessarily that's what you mean or even think, it's just that's the verbal path you went down, and so it can be a very limiting thing when really our minds themselves are not necessarily just linear like that. It's play out linearly, but in our minds it's a little more bird's eye viewy, even though I mean it can range, depends on your awareness and clarity of thought, but that's, I think, one of the big hindrances to any of this is the fact that it's these branches, and it is like, they call it the tree of knowledge. Anyway, the most comprehensive exposition of literal Cabala published by a Freemason is the Cabala, Canon, 1897. William Sterling, the author of this work, makes it plain that Freemasonry has a deep interest in the Cabala. Not only Freemasonry, but any, cult. Truly, I wouldn't say truly, but the Cabala is a big chunk and a big background to a lot of occult teachings and practices and whatnot. Cabala formed an important part of the Masonic traditions and undoubtedly contains the nearest approach to a direct revelation of ancient canonical secrets of the Old World. We are also informed that the Brotherhood in its higher degrees is deeply concerned with the Cabala. Albert Mackey in the authoritative Encyclopedia of Freemasonry asserts that Cabala is intimately connected with the symbolic science of Freemasonry. He goes on to say that much use of it is made in the advanced degrees, and entire rites have been constructed on its principles. Hence it demands a place in any general work on Freemasonry. More recently, Thomas de Worrell spelled out in a paper delivered to the Allied Masonic degrees, Britannia Lodge No. 303, wherein Masonry, the Cabala, is mainly to be found. Some of our rites have obvious Kabbalistic influence, such as the 28th degree of the ancient and accepted Scottish rite, which is called the Night of the Sun. Well, also the fact that there's 33 degrees, and, it's all Kabbalistic, but a lot of people, again, YouTube is very iffy on this whole subject, but like a lot of people like to blame the Jews for everything, and that's the irony is, I don't know, there's just a lot to that subject. And no, I'm not Jewish, even though I have a Hebrew name and I'm talking about Hebrew stuff. I don't have a Hebrew name literally, I just use one. People are just offended by Hebrew for some reason, and the whole Jewish question. It's just an iffy subject, because anytime anything gets to the a massive sort of following, it ends up generating to the point that you don't really, I wouldn't want to be associated with, and I try to distance myself from any sort of one group, but at the same time, I can see the value in certain, obviously these teachings, but the modern day expression and the people, that's the problem with Masonry especially, and occult orders, is a lot of these people will try to act as if this stuff, you have to go through them to get it or something, but you really have to it's up to you. You have to go through yourself. And Albert Pike is yet another well-respected Mason, avowing the central place of Cabala within the craft. He wrote, "Masonry is the search after light." That search leads us directly back, as you see, to Cabala. He also confirmed for us that Cabala lies at the heart of Masonic cryptography. All the Masonic associations owe to it their secrets and symbols. Pike it seems to have regarded Night of the Sun as an extraordinarily important degree, for he devoted no less than 219 pages of morals and dogma to an exposition of it, far more than any of the other degrees. The largest single chunk of this chapter is taken up by 15 pages of a lecture of the Kabbalists. This starts in the form of a Masonic question and answer ritual concerning the numerical mysteries of the Cabala, and is prefaced by the words "Omnia in numeris cita sunt." Everything lies veiled in numbers. Pike tells us that not only Cabala is the key of the occult sciences, but that this key turns on the secret science of numbers, a big hint about the nature of Masonic cryptology. Brother Thomas Worrell is more explicit than Pike about how Kabbalistic numerology is employed in practical terms as a cryptic technique, and cites another eminent Freemason in his exposition. Gematria is basically exploring the inner meaning of mystical writings and scriptures by use of numerology. The way it is used is by interchanging letters of special names, phrases, and passages with their numerical equivalent. This is only done with the ancient languages of Hebrew, Greek, Latin, and Arabic. See, and that's where they're wrong, because they just haven't applied it, or applied Hebrew to English. See that there's so much overlap, there's so much, it basically confirms a lot of all this stuff when you actually just look at it. But Paul Foster Case, a writer, occultist, and Freemason, explains it thus: Gematria is based on the idea that words having the same value have correspondences in meaning. Magical language is a mode of cryptic writing used to preserve and transmit the practical secrets of the Western tradition of ageless wisdom. It is an artificial language combining Hebrew, Greek, and Latin elements. Its outstanding characteristic is that the letters of the three alphabets it employs serve also as numbers. Consequently, every word, phrase, or sentence is also a number, the sum of the value of the letters, or the values of the letters. We can see that the artificial language used by the ancient writers to conceal their initiatic secrets was essentially a language of numbers hidden from view beneath the words by means of gematria. Gematria is a viable cryptographic technique and one of fundamental concern to the higher levels of Freemasonry. Some of Freemasonry's most enduring secrets are thereby hidden. A big secret. One indicator that we are dealing with a big secret here is the fact that Paul Foster Case's book is strictly off limits to the general public. When I inquired about buying a copy with the publishers, builders of the Adytum, informed me that it was only available to members of their organization and only those who had served a 15-year probationary period. This is an extraordinary caution. Clearly, there are secrets of great significance revealed in Mr. Case's exposition of the magical language of gematria. At first glance, the secrecy is also rather curious, since there are a good number of books openly published on the subject of gematria, some of which are evidently written by Freemasons. The Canon by William Sterling is a prime example. We also find that John Michel, who is the modern editor of the Canon, has written a number of excellent books on the subject: The View over Atlantis, City of Revelation, The Dimensions of Paradise, etc. Additionally, there are works examining Hebrew gematria, such as Samuel Liddell McGregor Mather's The Cabala Unveiled, and those concerned with Greek gematria like David Feidler's Jesus Christ, Son of God, and Kieran Berry's The Greek Cabala. An example currently displayed online comes courtesy of J.J. Crowder Masonic Lodge in California. There are some Masonic researchers who think that the letter G represents gematria. Exploring this technique of letter-number substitution, one looks for words, names, and phrases that add up to like values. Like values are thought to have meaningful relationships. For example, the Hebrew word for heaven, Hashemayim, has the same gematria value as the word for soul, Neshama, that is 395, arrived by adding up each letter to arrive at a total. The Kabbalist would say this means that the soul is identical with heaven. This exegetical technique can be used with both the Hebrew scriptures and the Greek Christian scriptures. There are also other texts that have been found to contain hidden gematria in Latin and Arabic as well. From the practice of gematria have arisen extremely interesting techniques which reveal a type of spiritual geometry hidden within the scriptures. And it's really not just within scriptures, it's within the psyche, in linguistics, even unconsciously. That's a lot of the, it's really the crux of the matter, is the fact that some of this is done consciously and some of it is done unconsciously. So that's why it's hard to determine sometimes whether it's cryptographically put in there as a joke. They will do that as jokes. A lot of we'll get into that as we go on further. There's a lot of obvious usages of it. And it's not obvious unless you can see the code. The crux of the matter here is Sherlock Holmes noted in The Dog That Didn't Bark in the Night is that something is missing. There has been no credible work ever published on the subject of Latin gematria. We are informed that the subject exists and that it is important, but nowhere is it expounded. Why not? The reason for this omission hinges on the fact that gematria is not confined simply to the ancient languages. They are pretty much saying this, as the brethren would have us believe, but also extends to the modern European languages, which are based on Roman Latin script. Some of the greatest secrets of Freemasonry are hidden in the gematria coding of these languages, not least of which is English. Nothing is missing but the key. The really big secret is the key, the actual code used. It appears never to have been published, and probably so, for the reason that any Mason, letting the cat out of the bag, might expect to have his tongue cut out at the root, his beating heart plucked from his chest, and his guts drawn painstakingly through his ears and burnt to ashes before his all-seeing eyes. How can we find this code? Like all the mysteries of Freemasonry, finding the key is a matter of following a trail of clues. We saw above that the Masonic degree most closely associated with the numerical Cabala or gematria is the 28th degree in the Scottish Rite, Knight of the Sun. If we wish to find out a little more about this degree, we can go to Albert Mackey's History of Freemasonry. Here he tells us Knight of the Sun, in its original ritual, is a mere condensation of Rosicrucian doctrine. This is interesting. He then goes on to put the point more forcefully with the words, "There is not in the wide compass of Masonic degrees one more emphatically Rosicrucian than this." Mackey seems quite clear about this and not in the least bit allegorical. What does he mean by this term Rosicrucian, and where does it lead? He elaborates when he tells us that Henry Cornelius Agrippa's 3 books of occult philosophy may be considered as the textbook of the old Rosicrucian philosophy. It is in Agrippa's esoteric compendium, published in 1531, that we find the key. The second book of this tome is devoted to numbers and mathematical magic. The 18th chapter gives the gematria code of Greek, the 19th chapter gives that of Hebrew, and the 20th gives the code of Roman script languages such as English. Eureka, we found it. The right key question? How can we be sure that Agrippa's key is the right key? Once again, our Masonic writers confirm it for us. William Sterling drops a hint like a ripe plum on page 153 of the canon when he likens the Greek Orpheus to Jesus Christ. The name Orpheus has the value 1275. In the earliest efforts of Christian art, it is not uncommon to find Christos depicted playing upon a lyre in the fashion of Orpheus. No reason is known for this singular impersonation, but the number 1275, deduced from the name Orpheus, suggests the reason why the two gods had a similar identity. Number 1275 in no way suggests any relation why Christos should have a similar identity to Orpheus, at least not until we count the name Jesus Christ by Agrippa's code. If we do, we find the letter values of his name sum as 1275. It's quite clear that Sterling is alluding to Agrippa's code, and it is equally clear from the nature of his reference that it must constitute an initiation secret of high-degree Freemasonry. Now we have the key, we can turn it and begin to unlock the thesaurus of King Solomon's temple. I don't find this to be that yield that much. But I do think that he's on to something. Just for whatever reason, they don't look at the obvious. To me, it would just seem obvious, and it was used in like multiple cases, basically applying Hebrew to English by Crowley and Grant and Achad, and a few different words and phrases throughout the books. So it was sort of like logical. So yeah, the Ninth Arch has tons of what you could call Hebrew, English, gematria, just Hebrew applied to English, basically. He doesn't call it that, he just uses it, and it doesn't matter what it's really called, it's just the knowledge or the gnosis of the values and their attribution and the things that they would, correspond with, which the Ninth Arch has a lot in all its commentary, but he even says basically to make your own Cabala or grimoire, and you'll begin to see for yourself certain things that he talks about. Yeah, for those who don't know, I've mentioned this book already numerous times, but it's the 9th book of Kenneth Grant's Typhonian trilogy, and it ties in. It's a book within a book. First of all, it's Liber Akvish, the Book of the Spider, which is 29 chapters of like supposedly received texts or phrases and formulas and sigils and everything you can imagine. It just happens to be pretty spot on with a lot of things that I've found, and you just have to take it into context. Number 17 comes up a lot, which is funny because it's a big number in in a lot of different things. Yeah, it's funny how so many people talk about numerology, but don't talk about these origins, these deep origins, and all this. There's so many books and so many things that this all ties in with. It's just so funny that it's still underground, pretty much. Alright, so I wasn't going to mention it, but I thought about it after making the video that I did earlier. And this whole thing right here is the album or the disc to Mechanical Animals by Marilyn Manson, and I put a link to it. I did it a long time ago because I knew how much I owed to basically this album and Marilyn Manson for getting me to look into the Cabala. And if you look into the Hollywood album, he has all these pictures, these alchemical pictures and diagrams of the tree of life and egg, this weird egg thing that some alchemical egg. And I didn't think much of it at the time, obviously, of the egg at least, but now it's just funny how much the egg has popped up. And this website, the Noct Cabaret, which hasn't really been kept up with since Marilyn Manson's last 3 or 4 albums, it helped me to get into all this and learn of Aleister Crowley. And Manson even found certain, there's 15 letters in his name, there's 13 letters in my name. This sort of thing was like a template for me to look into my own Cabala, so to speak. And he kind of just made, his whole persona of Marilyn Manson with it. And 15, obviously, is the devil card. It's Ayin, the Hebrew letter Ayin, which means I. And obviously he's got the circle with the dot, which is the solar symbol, on his left eye. And in his book, which I got that, I remember reading it from start to finish and even staying up all night. And it was a school night, reading it on the bus to school, on the bus home from school. I couldn't stop reading his book. But I remember he quoted Donald Tyson talking about the apocalypse, how it's really an internal, personal event, and only secondarily externally. And some people are creating it externally. But yeah, the whole transformation from Antichrist Superstar, Mechanical Animals, and Holywood in the shadow, or in the valley of the shadow of death, is like Marilyn Manson's main triptych, or body of work. Obviously, I wouldn't say it's his main body of work because he has so many other good albums, but it's what he's more known for, and they were my favorite. I still listen to them like all the time. And but yeah, Marilyn Manson, he's another subject that gets kind of clouded by the external glamour, but Mechanical Animals can be arranged to is an alchemical man. Marilyn Manson is an alchemical man, and he's just, teaching. I don't know. It taught me all this stuff. I don't know if he intentionally was teaching people this, but even if you add up 1 through 14, it's 105, and you got the 1 and the 5 and the 0, and the 15 different eye dilations. 15, 15, 15, 15, the 15 keys, the omega. Even though omega in Greek is the 24th letter, it's O is the 15th letter. But yeah, this just got me into all of this Cabala, and obviously this website talks about the symbolism he uses quite extensively. The egg, Zimzum. There's a lot of Kabbalistic stuff, and there's some point in this video he mentions numerology.
Marilyn Manson, I'm here because my new album is biblical. There's a lot of biblical references still on this record, and a lot of numerological references too, but the omega symbol kind of represents the final stage of what was set forth on Antichrist Superstar. So this is kind of the final evolution of whatever it is that I am. Yeah. But again, there is some allusions to Christ as well in this record. There's a lot of different things, but if you look for coincidences, you'll start realizing that there are no such thing as coincidences, that everything has a purpose.
But like this sequence of numbers is just the 9s, and I found a fascination with the particular things that they come to equal, including 9,999, which is this biblical verse of Jesus, I believe, saying, "Repent, or else I will come unto thee quickly, and will fight against them with the sword of my mouth," which is symbolic in a lot of ways. The Logos, and obviously gematria itself expressing that, but 11,106 is obviously some other biblical verse that I found significant, and because 6 times 111 is 666, and that's the Uranus symbol, and I put the night side of Eden. It's pretty much the symbol of like a key, but also I think it looks like an antenna in a lot of ways, or a satellite even. I think that Kenneth Grant's books are a major key to all this, and this whole thing is like a serpent, or string, and it's emerging from the egg, and all these patterns emerge from the egg, basically. These are just divisions of, these divided by 3, and you got, Ma, you got 107, a lot of different things if you look them up, and the Cabala of 9 Chambers. You could probably find a lot more than I have. This is still, I never kept up with any of this. I put it in my personal database, so eventually I will get a website having all of it.